I'm Jo Radner, and I want to welcome you to the 2009 Dan Crowley Memorial Storytelling Concert. And this year, as you know, we have Rosalie Sorrels. Yeah. Now, the American Folklore Society has rules. The rule, as I recollect, I sometimes try to ignore them, but I believe the rule is that you cannot be on the program more than once, or maybe 1.5 times. But Rosalie has been on this program 4 times. This is her last appearance. I'm going to quote something she said in another context yesterday. She said, there are some people for whom you just chuck out the rules. And she's one of them, of course. At this point, she doesn't need another introduction, but of course you know that she has been traveling and listening and gathering all her life, and the whole world is her garden. And tonight she's going to speak to us and sing to us about a very particular garden, the one up at Grimes Creek where her family settled. And she's going to tell us about that place and about her life and her family through that place. I want to mention to you also that she has CDs, DVDs, and the book of her mother's writings that she's going to quote from tonight over here, if you're interested afterwards, for sale. It's an extraordinary privilege just to have Rosalie Sorrels here to talk and sing to us. Please welcome her. Oh boy. All right.
When I went east and encountered those people back there who I really love, I would get inquiries about my origins from the taxi cab drivers, and my favorite one was, "Hey lady, where you from? You really talk funny." And I'd say, "I'm from Idaho." "Idaho? Oh, lady, you ought to see my wife cook potatoes." That's all they know about us, is that we have potatoes. And I used to wave my arms around and yell and scream and say, "We have mountains and lakes, it's beautiful. We have high plains, we have incredible sunsets, we have forests you can't imagine." Then they all started coming here, and now I say, well, they'd always say they thought I was from the Midwest because I was from Idaho, and they were thinking of Iowa or Ohio, And then they'd say, "You're from the Midwest, right?" And I'd say, "No." And the address about the lakes and the mountains, and now I say, "Yeah, I'm from the Midwest." But I learned this poem the first time I really went east to Newport, Rhode Island, to introduce myself. And it's written by a man named Peter Weyrich. And I believe he wrote it about Ezra Pound, actually. But I think of it in a personal way. It's called "To a Sinister Potato." Oh, vast earth apple, waiting to be fried, of all life's starers the most many-eyed, what furtive purpose hadst you long ago in Indiana or in Idaho? In Indiana and in Idaho, snug underground, the great potatoes grow, puffed up by secret paranoias, unguessed by all the duped and starch-fed Middle West. Like coiled up springs, or like a will to power, The fat and earthy lurkers bide their hour, the silent watchers of our raucous show in Indiana and in Idaho. They think us bland, a food and not a flower. Wait, we'll outshine all roses in our hour. Not wholesomeness, but mania swells us so in Indiana and in Idaho. In each Kiwanis club, on every plate so bland and health exuding do we wait, that Indiana never knows how much we envy stars and hate the rose. Some doom will strike, as all potatoes know, when once too often mashed in Idaho. From underneath the ground, the drabbest of life's powers rises and is a star and shines and lowers. I love that poem. Now, this is a little book of my mother's writing. My mother was named Nancy Stringfellow. Actually, she was born Nancy Ann Kelly. And she married my father, Walter Pendleton Stringfellow. Isn't that a great name? You know what that is backwards? It's Retlaw Notlednep Wolofganerts. Wolofganerts. Great name. My mother ran a bookshop for 20 years in Boise, Idaho. And I mean, my whole family was massively literate, and all of the books of all the houses were lined with so many books, everybody thought it was our insulation. And they read them all to me, or to each other, or to themselves. Taught me to love words and books, how they feel, how they smell. And after my father died, she moved up to the cabin that he'd built that I now live in to stay. And she stayed there almost till she died. She finally got to the point where she really couldn't make it from the bed to the bathroom without resting 3 times on the way, and so she moved down into town to not an assisted living place, but a place for older people that has, you know, not that much room between the bed and the bathroom. And she'd smoked Lucky Strikes all her life, to wretched excesses of them, and so she had to be on oxygen all the time. She had this great big machine that followed her around everywhere, and she had a long, I think they call it a candela. Anyway, and it had this great long string, and she could go into the rooms and stuff. She said, "I feel like a fool on the end of a string." She had a great sense of humor, a little edge on it. You know? But she wrote a memoir, which never has been published. There were a couple of things wrong with it. She was a very good writer. One of the things wrong with it was that she didn't take herself as seriously as she should have, and she kept messing with the stuff she did to make it sound more like Irma Bombeck or somebody who sold, you know. She had a very good idea of what would sell, and she knew they wouldn't buy her really good stuff. But it was never published, and I'm really sorry. She tried to fix it. I think what was wrong with it was she left my father out. My father was amazing. He was from another planet. And he could walk on his hands for 2 blocks. He was really wonderful. But he was willful and difficult too, and he drank way too much. Although if I ever said any of those things in front of her, she would immediately dress me down for being disrespectful. And if I spoke too kindly of him, she'd get really mad because I was being too possessive or whatever. You know. My whole family was like that. Anyway, I took these things that are in this book out of her memoir, and I started reading them at storytelling festivals when I went to them. Everybody liked them so much, I made an album called Report from Grimes Creek, which is over there and has some of these stories in it. And I'll just start out with this poem, which is the title, Report from Grimes Creek After a Hard Winter. The rue survived. The rue and the bitter hyssop. Remembered sorrow can survive the bitterest cold. But the lovely lemon thyme lost its life in the stone-hard ground, its delicate roots shriveled for lack of warmth. Some of the herbs are coming back. Hardy horehound, lemon balm, and the astringent bee balm. That western bergamot whose faintly medicinal fragrance Mormon ladies use to scent their handkerchief boxes. Schooled in hardship, it drove its roots deep underground and waited out the winter. Now, toughened and durable, it makes its way to the sun. Stray tendrils of mint wandering far from their beds, battening on earthworm castings, smothered the sage. Mint is fine on lamb, but it takes the pungency of sage to give any flavor to an Albertson turkey. Nothing can stop the time. Never say that time must have a stop. The tansy is shouting hallelujahs of joy for Easter coming, and of course, jonquils and crocuses and grape hyacinths never have given a damn. Cold snow or warm rain, spring is spring and damn the elements, full speed ahead. And it's early yet. Some roots may still be asleep, warm and safe and lazy, waiting for May or June, or maybe the second coming. The first time I ever saw anything she wrote, it was a poem she wrote for me. She never showed me any stuff until she thought it was perfect, and she was really picky about stuff, so she never showed it to me. But she did send me this in the mail. I want you to imagine while I'm telling this poem to you what it's like to get that from your mother in the mail. Song for Daughters. I mean, I knew she was smart, but like any daughter, I did my very best to conceal myself from her. Imagine how I felt when not only did she know everything, but would tell. Sing your songs to keep away the dark. Draw the curtains. Light the fire. The candles glimmer, and perfume of pine and roses fill the room. Outside, the cold stars shine. The books you loved are waiting on the shelves. The wine is poured, the table set. The curtains drawn across the pane keep out the sound of wind and rain. Outside, the cold stars shine. But the wind is rising and you've got to go. Clouds are running races in the sky. The treetops toss. The wind is riding high. The stars are calling, calling. No arms can hold you in a warm embrace. The place you want is not this place. You want the winds of time against your face. You want the wild rain falling. Outside, the cold stars shine, and you are theirs, not mine. She was such a trip. She loved that place so much. She called it Carencia, which is a Spanish word that Margaret Mead said means the place in the bull ring where the bull feels most comfortable. I think that's what I heard. Or my mother said it means the center of your soul, or, you know. So she wrote this piece when she was living up there alone, quite a long time after her dad had died. And I think I love it the most of anything she ever wrote. It's just, and the older I get, the closer I get to it. I mean, she was 84 when she died, and I'm only 76 now, so I'm still too young to know everything, but this got me a lot closer. I live by myself up in that cabin that she's talking about, with my dog. My dog's name is Lenny Bruce. Yesterday was painful and sad, and I think I lost something I will regret as time goes by. Bill came up to see me one last time. He has been transferred to Detroit and wants me to go with him. He offered me security, and as he unfortunately phrased it, safe harbor in our declining years. I was divided between irritation and amusement, and now I'm feeling remorseful for dealing so flippantly with an honest and honorable emotion. Bill and I have been friends for years. I respect him and admire him. He's a lonely man. His family's fragmented, and he wants companionship and a sense of belonging. Well, I can give him neither. I have at the moment little to give to anyone. Perhaps I'm selfish, but I have attained a precarious peace. I've struck my roots into the soil, O daughter of Antaeus, and here I stay. Yet this is a real wrench. One of my last links snapped. One more reminder that once I was a young, vital woman, and now I am an elderly lady. Yet I'm sure that my decision is the only possible one. I prefer to deal with the indignities of age, the dentures that slip, the knees that swell and ache, the corn that has to be pared in decent privacy with no bystanders, however sympathetic, however sustaining. And any October in the hills is worth a year in Detroit. To exchange garancia for a manicured golf course? To swap the conversation of birds for the chatter of the cocktail hour? To trade a joyous freedom for a small security? Ah, life, which sometimes seems so very long to me, is way too short for that. I had a great time with my mother. I always thought she was one of the most interesting people I ever met. But she had a wicked side to her that I liked too. I aspire to that myself. She had little things she put on, you know, to give me a hard time. She had this little voice she'd assume. I mean, she really had a big, sort of Tallulah Bankhead way of talking, you know, like that. But when she wanted to get my attention, she'd talk like this. And anyway, she got sick one time when I was down in California. My kids called me up and said she'd gone to the hospital, and she did not like to go to the hospital, so I was really worried. And I got in the car and drove there from San Francisco in 12 hours. And there was a snowstorm, too. Real slow going over the pass, you know. But I got there, and I went into the hospital, and I went into the room, and she was lying there, looking transparent. And she said, come over here by the bed and sing to me. And I went over and said, what do you want to hear, Mom? And she said, sing me that song I love so much. She has 1,000 songs she loves so much, right? And I said, which one, Mom? And she says, you know the one. I said, come on, Mom, which one? The one about the flower lady. I said, oh, Mom, you're not going to make me sing that in front of everybody. I learned it from Phil Oakes a long time ago. It goes, don't cry, lady, I'll buy your goddamn violets. Don't cry, lady, your rasters too. Don't cry, lady, take off the damn dark glasses. Hello, mother, I knew it was you. She used to make me sing that to her over the phone. Can you imagine people walking along? I was in Florida, right? You know, at a payphone on the beach, and I'm singing that, But I'll sing you one she really did love a lot. My friend Utah Phillips wrote this, and she was sure he wrote it about that house that she lived in and now I live in. That place. Extraordinary place. And he'd never been there, so I know he didn't. But it works. Everybody has a corner they turn that contains this feeling. I feel like singing it with me. The chorus is really easy. Here come the critics now. The news, it won't be good. Come along and hurry now and do the things you should. Oh, I could see you dancing by me, held up by secret strings, pulled by friends and lovers, waiting in the wings, or clearing in the forest, and I'm in the sea. part. Clearing in the forest, an island in the sea. Space for loving, a place for you and me. Aboard the Titanic now, it all looks black and white. If we don't panic now, well, it'll be alright. Ah, but the wireless is broken, the seas are getting rough, and we only have each other. You know that's not enough. We need a clearing in the forest, an island in the sea. Space for loving, a place for you and me. We need a clearing in the forest, an island in the sea. Space for loving, a place for you and me. Down in the magic city now, the ghost of Mammon sings. You can play for plastic feelings, you can play for plastic things. The only difference is the playing. Losing still the same. Truth is in the saying that doing is the game. We need a clearing in the forest, an island in the sea. Space for loving, a place for you and me. We need a clearing in the forest, an island in the sea. Space for loving, a place for you and me. I want to read you one more little piece from my mother. Then I'll take up my dad. My dad was from another planet. She wrote this it's like a little dialogue between them. They were so close, they finished each other's sentences. They knew so much about each other, it was scary. And they were so connected to the ground and the air there, it was scary. And I am now too, and it's a good scary though. This is called That's It. It's a love story. I woke before dawn to hear a mutter in the skies, a rumbling, rolling sound. Heaven forgive me, I have become such a creature of civilization that I thought first of a fleet of bombers. And the willows flattened, the pines tossed and swayed. A great wind swept down the valley. All day long the thunder crashed and the lightning flashed and blessed rain poured down in a solid sheet. It's been many years since I've seen such a pyrotechnical display. Once, long ago, when the old cabin was still standing, Mother Nature unleashed her forces, and for a whole day, the valley rang like a gong, and the lightning did a war dance from cliff to cliff. Rosalie was 4 years old then, and was absolutely terrified. burrowing under the bed and whimpering. I held her in my arms and sat on the porch with her, telling her that it was just the old year's 4th of July celebration. Mother Nature was setting off firecrackers. She got so interested that she watched eagerly for fireballs and cheered when swords of lightning sliced across the sky. I was not so quiet and calm as I pretended. Took real discipline not to tense my muscles when a big thunderclap exploded with a shattering sound, and I wanted to wince when a lightning bolt ran down the biggest pine on Holcomb like a sharp axe splitting it in two. The storm went on all night. Trees crashed, boulders rolled from the cliffs. In the darkness, Walt got up, lit the lamp, and started hunting through the shelf of books. I rolled over and groggily supplied him with the quotation I knew he was searching for. The doubling storm roars through the woods, the lightnings flash from pole to pole. Near and more near the thunders roll. That's it, he grunted and came back to bed. Walter Pendleton, Stringfellow. He was really handsome, my father. Had a little bitty mustache, sort of like Errol Flynn. He was slim and lithe and strong and graceful till the day he died. Died too young, he was only 61. No, 63 he was. And he built that house that I live in now. See, my grandfather bought that piece of land the year before I was born, and I'm 76 now. And he built a cabin on it. It's a beautiful old cabin. And he and my grandmother, his lovely wife, Rosalie, for whom I'm named, Rosalie Stringfellow, moved up there to stay for the rest of their lives. And I guess it was when I was in junior high school, there was a big flood that just washed it right away. It just tore it right up. The floors collapsed, the walls fell in, the roof came down. Dad was going to build it again, right where it was, but he wasn't a carpenter at all, although he did very well with building. He was an engineer, really. He built highways 30 and 40 in Idaho when they were the principal connecting roads. And he stood there surveying the mess of the fallen house and where it was. And he said, if I build another house right there, another flood is going to come and wash it out. So he just built it at the other end, right by a little hill that I mean, we've had 4 or 5 floods that were just killers. They ripped the whole road out and everything, but they never touched the house. It just goes around in back of that little hill and leaves the house alone. And he cut every log. It's a log house. And he made every brick. The bricks are all, they're adobe and concrete bricks that are big and flat, and he poured them in wood forms, and you can still see the wood grain in them all these years later. And he put up the downstairs, and then he put up the upstairs. The downstairs is bricks, and the upstairs is the logs. And then he thought he was done. He put the roof on. And my mother stamped her tiny foot and said, Walter Pendleton Stringfellow. I am not living in that house if there's not a bathroom and a kitchen. He thought you could cook perfectly well over a fire outside. And he built a sort of wonderful fireplace out of some stones he cut when they knocked the old courthouse down. Great stove, but she wasn't having it. So he built a kitchen and bath on there, and that's what's there. And the tin roof on top. And it's beautiful. Their presence and their souls inhabit that place, and they shine out of every inch of it. All the walls are covered with bookcases all full of books, and that's the insulation. Yeah. It took him 15 years to build it. We really didn't have any money, no money at all, so he made everything, or he went and found things that would work. And friends came and helped some, and my brother did a lot of it. My brother's 10 years younger than me, and he was only about 14 when he did the plumbing on it, which just failed this year. It just stopped working, and a plumber whose name is, I can't remember his name now. It's like, it's a nickname, but it's really, he likes old plumbing. He loves people who know anything about old plumbing. And a friend of ours told him he should come up and look at my plumbing, and he asked me what kind of plumbing I had, and I said, well, it's old, really old. And I said, and it's made out of stuff Dad brought from different sales and stuff. And I don't really know how to describe it, but it's only in one part of the house where the bathroom is, and you have to go into it from the outside because there's nothing under the house except just a little space like that and a gray water system. He says, you know what a gray water system is? I said, yeah, that's what it is. And the water comes from a spring that comes out of the side of the mountain, and it comes down there, and I don't know how to describe it. He said, I can fix that. In fact, I'd like to fix that. And pretty soon he came up and looked at it, and he said, I got everything I need for that in the garage. It's just an old cobbled together cabin plumbing. I said, hey, my brother plumbed that when he was 14 years old. And he says, oh yeah, how old is he now? And I said, 66. And he said, holy shit, that's really a good job. It lasts that long. And he did. He came up and fixed it. It's fixed. It works. And the only reason it gave up was because 2 trees that were about that tall grew all that time, and they grew together like lovers, you know. And they just tore that plumbing up so bad that it finally turned itself all the way around, tied itself in a knot. And he took it all out, and he said he had everything in the garage, and he did. He came up and fixed it, and I said, what do I owe you? And he said, cook me dinner. Too great. Oh, Daddy was, he was a genius. The water comes from an underground river, and it comes up through this shaft that he dug, and comes down the side of the mountain, and he fixed it at one time so that it watered things all the way on the way through this drip system that he had. And other people who don't understand any of those things have come while I was gone, or while Mother was too sick to bite them or whatever. And they fixed it, you know, so it'll be more modern. And now none of it works anymore. But the water does come down to our pump house, and the pump house puts it up in the house. And the year that all the other people didn't do their gray water systems and it started being polluted, we got an ultraviolet filter to disinfected and it comes up into the house, and it doesn't taste near as good as it used to, but it works. And I just think of him every time things go wrong and think, who do I know who could fix this? Hardly anybody except that one plumber and my brother. My dad had a beautiful tenor voice, and he used to sing all the time. He was a morning person, and my mother was a night person. He was a diurnal, and she was a nocturnal, and that's why I think they stayed together so long. They didn't have to be bothering each other all the time, you know. And she had to get up in the morning to go to work finally. She worked at the bookshop in Boise here, and taught the town of Boise how to read. And she would get up in the morning, and my father, who loved morning, would have been up for 3 hours waiting for morning so he could watch it happen. And he always called her Ancient Crone, only he changed it to Ainch in the end so she wouldn't notice so much. Say Ainch. Ainch. And he'd go to embrace her as she came down the stairs, and she'd say, "Don't touch me till I've had my coffee." They were so funny together. They were so in love, always. I think of this song when I think of Dad. He had a lovely light tenor voice, and he sang quite a lot. And she loved to hear him sing most of this. No, let's see, that's not the right key. Down by, that's too loud. Down by, yeah. Down by the Sally Gardens, my love and I did stand. She, and on my leaning shoulder she placed her snow white hand. She bid me take love easy as the grass grows on the weir. But I was young and foolish, and now am full of fear. Down by the Sally Gardens, my love and I did meet. She passed the Sally Gardens on little snow white feet. She bid me take love easy as the leaves grow on the tree. But I was young and foolish, and with her did not agree. He used to sing to me all the time and tell me stories, and he loved the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. And when I got to be a high school kid and threatened to sleep in too late, he would come and wake me up by screaming, "Awake! For morning in the bowl of night hath flung the stone that puts the stars to flight. And lo, the hunter of the east hath caught the Sultan's turret in a noose of light." I'd say, "Oh God, Dad, give me a break." So I'm going to tell you, let's see, oh God, it's getting late, I'm already almost used up my time. I'll tell you this really great story about my father, and it's called The Day My Father Quit Drinking. He really drank a lot. He loved to drink, he loved to fight. He actually got a Golden Globe award, a secondary Golden Globe award for being the most popular boxer in Idaho. He was really a charming fellow, although he was from another planet, as I said, and often couldn't relate to people and was sort of reticent about being social. But when he was social, he drank, and then he could stand it. And he could walk on his hands for 2 blocks. And he could walk all the way up the Capitol steps and back down. And while he was building the cabin, he would go up to the cabin site and he would build and drink all day until he fell down. And then he would stay down until he got up, and then he would drink and build some more. And most of the time he did that all in a solitary way. He didn't feel like he had to be around other people to drink. He thought he could do that all by himself. And then it was fine, but every once in a while he became overwhelmed with a sense of urgency that he needed some company. And that's when the trouble always started. So there he was, building and drinking and building and drinking and sleeping and building and drinking. One night when he became overwhelmed with this desire for human companionship. And he went and got in the car. It was about twilight time. And he drove, it's 10 miles up there. He drove that 10 miles. There weren't hardly any people around then, so it wasn't so dangerous as it might be now for somebody who'd been building and drinking so much. He got up there, and he got out of the car and started in a strange spiral for Wiggles Saloon. And he got up to the door, and he encountered at the door the sheriff and the sheriff's deputy, who liked him very much, actually. Everybody liked him. But they were worried about him. They suggested to him that he should probably stop drinking and go home. And he'd probably had enough and didn't need to come into the bar. And he goosed the sheriff's deputy and danced the sheriff around the room 3 times. And then he went outside and went back to the car in that same strange spiral and got into it and started driving back. He carefully arranged the car over the yellow line so that he wouldn't lose track of the road. And he started out about 6 miles an hour, which he thought was a proper speed, and he drove very carefully toward home. Well, the house wasn't built up there yet, so they weren't living there. They were living in a house downtown. That's about 35 miles he had to drive. Carefully, the yellow line. And he got down to, the biggest earth-fill dam in the country then, I think, Lucky Peak Dam had been built. And he got down to the Lucky Peak Dam, where he encountered some guy coming from the other direction, from Boise, going to Idaho City, who was in exactly the same shape he was in, and had adopted the yellow line technique. So he was coming, and they had a collision. Not really, they just sort of. And the man began to swear at him. And he thought, oh boy, a fight. And then he thought, oh no, I can't do that. I've had a head-on collision, and I'm drunk. They're going to put me in jail. I've got to get out of here. So he got out of the car. And on one side was the Lucky Peak Dam, which was a really great place. It was the big earth-filled dam. The water came down through these big pipes, and it came out in two big pipes. They're huge, big pipes. Came out with a huge force, and the water shot up in the air and made these really good, at night when the sun was setting, it would refract all through there and make rainbows everywhere. And then there was the road, and there was a huge sort of receptacle for all this water that was roiling and boiling around with boulders in it and stuff, bang, 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 bang. It was a really amazing, exciting bit of water in there. And on the other side of the road was a lava fall, basalt lava, and a sort of cliff that went straight up to the sky, it looked like. And he left the scene of the crime, and nobody could find him. The police arrived almost immediately, which they never do usually, but they couldn't find him anywhere. And the other guy was just grousing about how he was going to miss dinner and couldn't tell him where he went. And they immediately assumed that he had gone into that water and drowned, because it was right there roiling and moiling around with all those boulders. And it never occurred to them that he might have climbed up those rocks and gone up those cliffs in a crab-like fashion, which is what he did. And so they towed what was left of the car and the other guy back into town, and they got a whole bunch of students from the university to get some wetsuits, and they sent them into this roiling, boiling water, except they had to stop it roiling and boiling, so they got a bunch of engineers to turn the dam off, and it took them like 2 days to turn the dam off. It was a really big, huge mess of a problem to do that. And they all got in there looking for his crushed and broken body, which had gone up the cliff. And after he got up the cliff, a light rain was falling, and he was perfectly sober, and he said, "Oh, I have really ruined my life now. Nobody will ever want to see me again. I have to get out of here." So he'd gone back down and hitchhiked to Portland. But he neglected to tell anybody that. So for about 3 days, my mother called me down in Salt Lake, where I was having babies and being a housewife, and said that my father was probably dead, and she was very agitated and really pissed off at him, but nevertheless missed him and already, and I was in the same shape, and everything was awful, and he didn't call anybody till about 3 days later, and he called up my mother and said, "Hi, are you mad?" And she said, "Rack, and don't come back." And he called me up and said, oh, no, he hitchhiked to Sacramento, and then he called me up and said, "I have shaved off my mustache and I'm going to Mexico." And I said, "Oh, Daddy, you don't want to go to Mexico. You don't speak Spanish. You don't know anybody there. You won't like it. Why don't you come here? I'll help you. I won't tell anybody." So he did. He hitchhiked to Salt Lake City, and I put him in the attic. And I brought him cookies and tea and sat and talked to him. And by this time, I had called my mother up and announced that he was really okay, and she was pretty mad. And I talked to him for about 8 days. We just sat and talked and drank tea and whatever, Finally, he said, "I have to go home." And I said, "Well, I'll drive you." And he said, "No, I have to do this myself." And he got on the bus and went home, which I thought was very brave of him, because they had a 5-state alarm out for him, and they had all the newspapers were screaming about what he'd done, And he was really a shy man, and he didn't even want to hear about it. And when he got off the bus, the sheriff just nailed him and took him right to the jail, no stops, and put him in front of the judge the next day. And the judge was from up in Idaho City, and he knew everybody in the family. He said, "Walter Pendleton, Stringfellow. How could you do this to your dear little family?" Oh, God, he he just hated it. He was in there 2 weeks. They put him in jail immediately. 2 weeks. He'd never been in jail in his life, although he probably should have been. But when they let him out, he quit drinking. He never drank again, as far as I know, although I didn't monitor him all the time. But he and my mother moved into that cabin up there in the mountains. He didn't live very long. He only lived about 4 years after that. But they were very happy, and they had a really nice time. She never wanted to marry anybody else. She never even thought about it. She was really mad at him, too, because I found some poems she wrote after she died, and one started out, "You said you'd come back, and you never did." So I'll leave you with this song that my friend Dave Van Rock wrote. I think it's the most beautiful love song I ever heard, and she loved it. When first I met you years ago, in another time and place, the thought came to my mind I'd never seen a kinder face, a warmer laugh, a gentler smile, eyes more full of light. I'd be a fool if I didn't fall in love with you that night. Tramped around the world, my dear, now our fortune was to roam. But each place that I've been with you, that place has been my home. And if I must wander on alone, with no place to abide, I'd be a fool if I didn't. Now I must wonder. I'm having some memory problems. We used to call those senior moments, but now we call them rolling blackouts. I must wander on alone, with no place to abide. I will spend my life, my dear, with you here by my side. Certainly couldn't have been I love that song. I really know it, but it won't come back to me. Memory is a very harsh thing sometimes. And I can't control it anymore. It's getting old as a bitch. But I know, instead of singing a love song, I'll sing a song that I associate with my father. I went to his room in the middle of the night, crept to his side, and I turned on the light. But to my surprise, he was nowhere in sight, 'cause my Uncle Walter goes waltzing at night. This is the chorus, and you should culture that he should be good. He should do all the things that we said that he should. Sounds like the current administration. Well, I think he'd feel better off out in the woods.